Hello everybody, I am Jake, aka Bomber, and I welcome you into Jobber Radio's monthly Deathmatch Rundown. In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you several different things that took place in the first 6 months of 2024 inside the deathmatch world of professional wrestling. There is a lot that's gone down through June, and I'm going to do my best to touch on everything I can. I'm talking anything from 10 must-see death matches that you better not skip over to special happenings in the scene that's taken place. We will take a brief look at every deathmatch tournament that took place so far this year, including some major career milestones that were achieved. And when it comes to those deathmatch championships, I have you covered in mentioning each and every title match in the past 6 months. We have an insane amount to catch up on, so let's get this monster episode started. So it's been 6 months since the last monthly deathmatch rundown, and we're going to try to recap right here in this one video. Crazy enough, we're going to recap from January all the way through June 2024. Now, I'm not going to be able to cover everything in detail like I did before because we're covering 6 months here, but we're going to get to everything at least briefly. And right off the bat, we're going to get into some deathmatch tournament recaps. It's one of my favorite things to do. I hope you guys enjoy it. Let's get into a couple tournament recaps. The first deathmatch tournament of 2024 took place at H2O with the Unlucky 13 Danny Havoc Hardcore Championship Tournament. It took place on February 17th at the show titled Causing Havoc. Now in this tournament, Bam Sullivan was walking in the current Danny Havoc Hardcore Champion and made a major statement saying that he wanted the title to be on the line in every single round. And each first round match would consist of 4 multi-fighter matches. Bam would put on a strong performance in the opening match against challengers like the big man Christian Ross, JB Anderson, who carved him up with an electric cutter, and Lady Blakely, who ate this Death Valley driver onto a barbed wire board. Bam would end up getting the pin on her to get that first win, advancing to the next round. Next up, Kid Osborne decided to force himself into the tournament, completely ruining the name, by the way, making this a 14-person tournament instead of 13. He held his own for a moment against Gigi Everson, but would soon be put in his place by Chris Bradley. It would be Jimmy Chondo Lion, though, who drilled Gigi with this stop sign and then put his craziness on full display by double stomping a bundle of carpet strips with his bare feet. Chondo takes the win, moving on to round number 2. Fan favorite Neil Diamond Cutter would be out next to take on the grimy bitch Jess Moss and Anthrax in a trailer trash death match. There would be plenty of hijinks in this one, but eventually things would get a little more serious. They would utilize everything from the trailer park here, but only one of them would be able to move forward. I thought things came to an end here with this rolling DVD onto a pallet, but Anthrax found a way to kick out. That would force Neil to resort to strapping a belt around the throat of Anthrax and just straight up choking the man out. Neil Diamond Cutter advances. In the last opening round match, Mouse would break out his unorthodox style, trying to score an upset, but it just wouldn't be in the cards. And you know what? Surprisingly enough, Declan Grant hardly got any offense in here. This thing would be all Alex Stretch, who had the full crowd support. He would land a big splash onto both of his opponents to get the relatively easy win. In round number 2, we would see a brutal match between Neil Diamond Cutter and Alex Stretch. Both guys bit it hard headfirst into panes of glass, but that would just be the start of this thing. Being a tables, ladders, chairs, and more panes of glass match, we kind of saw it all. And after pulling out all of those stops, Neil would connect with his rolling Death Valley driver through even more glass to secure the win, sending him on to the finals. Bam Sullivan would once again be putting his title on the line, this time against one of his bitter rivals, Jimmy Chondo Lion. Both guys went with their bare feet in this one, and yeah, you guessed it, they tore each other's feet up. Now, Bam won the other Danny Havoc Hardcore tournament all the way back in 2020, but sadly enough, he wouldn't even be making it to the finals. Chondo gave Bam a swift kick to the groin and leveled him with the title belt. Chondo wins the title and will be moving on to try and defend it. With the lights in the H2O Center dimmed, we would bear witness to an electrified light tubes final round match between the brand new champion Jimmy Lion and his opponent Neil Diamond Cutter. After taking the early advantage in the match, Chondo would get on the mic and talk down to Neil as he just pelted him with light tubes. Despite Chando's best efforts to target Neil's right knee, the fighting spirit from the veteran came through as he got right back into this final round match. Chando would get his shoulder up after this rolling DVD, but just like in the opening round match, Neil grabbed the first thing he could and he wrapped it around his opponent's neck. This time it was an extension cord. He proceeded to choke out the champ to win the H2O Danny Havoc Hardcore Championship for the first time in his career, and he also takes home the first Deathmatch tournament win in 2024. On May 30th, Crimson Crown Wrestling hosted the second Games of Supreme Violence tournament, where the Supreme Violence champion, Homeless Jimmy, would try his best to defend the title in every single round. In the opening match of the night, the very first Games of Supreme Violence winner, BC Killer, he would try to go back-to-back, but in his way would be Casanova Valentine. This was a gloves of pain match, and boy did they take full advantage of punching the holy hell out of one another. As the fight spilled outside of the ring, Valentine tortured his opponent with a little bit of waterboarding. BC Killer would counter that with his big blade, but it wouldn't be enough to get the win. Not even the Devil's Brigade interfering would be able to stop Casanova from snatching up that blade and driving it into BC's mouth with a crossface. As you could see, BC Killer had no choice but to tap out. Next up, Lazarus would try his best to dethrone Homeless Jimmy to take his title and move on in the tournament, but the champ has been down before and knew exactly how to bounce back. He sent Lazarus chest first into a pile of roses with his drop toe hold and then instantly locked in a choke. But it wasn't until he grabbed these thorned roses, grinded them into the face of his challenger, that he quickly tapped out. Jasmine St. Clair would accompany Madman Pondo down to the ring next to take on a mystery opponent. Much to everyone's surprise, out would come Carnage, who has been MIA in the deathmatch world since 2019. The two legends prove they have plenty of pain they are willing to dish out and endure to walk away with this win. Throughout this match, Pondo made it look like he was giving Carnage second thoughts about showing back up in CCW, but after getting the hell beat out of him, he drove Pondo down through a door to advance to the second round. In the final match of the opening round, two men who know each other all too well would continue their beef, and I'm talking about Michael Kruger and JD Horror. Lots of barbed wire would be utilized in this one, as well as plenty of light tubes and a kiddie pool? Well, this was an Under the Crimson Sea death match, so I guess that checks out. A fish hook was driven straight into the throat of Kruger, followed by a decapitating clothesline to lay him out. With this win, JD Horror will be moving on. In round 2, Casanova Valentine would be tasked next with taking out the defending Supreme Violence champion, Homeless Jimmy. Even though Casanova is one of the best brawlers in the entire scene, a shopping cart to the groin can throw any man off his game. Oddly enough though, once the fight made it back into the ring, that's when Casanova took control of this match. He busted Jimmy open badly with several of these light tube shots, and just when it looks like we were about to see a brand new champion, Jimmy countered Valentine with a DDT onto his shopping cart. Now donning a full crimson mask, the champ will be moving on to the finals. To see who would be challenging him for that title, JD Horror would square up in a Taipei death match against that returning Carnage. In the opening round, JD tweaked his left knee, which he had taped up here. That would be a giant bullseye for Carnage, who focused on it throughout this relatively short match. JD did try to battle back, sending Carnage face first into a pane of glass, but in the end, his hurt knee would cost him. Carnage lit his fist on fire and delivered a KO punch, dropping JD to secure the win. So the finals are set in the Games of Supreme Violence 2 tournament. Homeless Jimmy would have to defend his title for a third time tonight, this time against the mystery entrant in the tournament, the returning deathmatch veteran, Carnage. And right out of the gate, Carnage was slammed onto a literal bed of light tubes. They traded shots back and forth as blood drenched both of their faces. I do think Homeless Jimmy got the worst of the gushers, though I thought he may have died at one point. The champ looked to use his trademark shopping cart, which helped him get past Valentine in the second round, but this time it came back to bite him as Carnage drove him down spine first onto it. That is the 3 count, and there you have it, folks. Carnage returns to CCW, winning the Games of Supreme Violence 2 tournament, and ends Homeless Jimmy's streak at 333 days as champion. This marks Carnage's second career deathmatch tournament, with his first coming back in 2018 in the third Sovereign of Slaughter tournament. The 9th Tournament of Survival took place on June 1st, and to most in the scene, this is the deathmatch tournament to see on the year. GCW brought in 4 international talents to fill half of the field, so the pressure was on the US to defend its territory. Ultramanus Black would have his hands full as he returned to GCW to take on the former 2-time BJW Deathmatch champion, Yuki Ishikawa. To get things started, they pulled down light tubes which were hanging above the ring to just casually smash over each other's head. Yuki would then outsmart Ultramanus, bringing him back into the ring after trying to recover on the outside. Ultramanus would scoop Ishikawa up, slamming him down through a barbed wire board, but would later be on the wrong end of just straight up brute force, getting a massive black bundle of tubes smashed into his chest. That led to one final slam onto some more light tubes to put Ultramanus Black away. Yuki Ishikawa will move on. Up next, we add another BJW talent, which happens to be the current BJW Deathmatch champion, Hideyoshi Kamitani, taking on one of the top UK deathmatch wrestlers in the world today, Big Effin' Joe. Instead of rocking his trademark whitey-tidies, I noticed he was doing his best Zandig impression, and after winning Tournament of Death last year for CZW, I think it makes a little sense. Joe would smash a large bundle of tubes over Kamitani's head, which just seemed to piss him off. This ended up being one of the harder hitting matches of the tournament, seeing the current BJW Deathmatch champion look like he was out there to cave in Big Effin' Joe's skull. I'm not kidding, these guys were out there swinging wildly. Fans would get in on the action later as these two fought on the outside of the ring for a while. With a large TV set up on some chairs on the outside, Joe would launch Kamitani off the top rope, crashing through it. Later on back in the ring, the BJW star would showcase some nice strength just before sending Joe through a pane of glass in the corner with a Saito suplex. That would be it. Hideyoshi Kamitani takes the victory, moving on over Big Effin' Joe. Shunma Katsumata from DDT Pro Wrestling in Japan would be out next to take on Brandon Kirk, who has been waiting for his shot in the Tournament of Survival for years now. These two put on a pretty damn good death match, which most were calling the match of the entire tournament. Kirk's boots were removed much to his displeasure as he was driven down onto hundreds of Legos. The adrenaline kicked in though as Brandon walked over all of those blocks just to plant Katsumata down into them head first. Brandon did retrieve his boots, but those would not protect him from this monster sunset powerbomb down through tubes. More glass was on the menu as Kirk took on even more punishment from the current DDT Extreme champion. As Kirk was sandwiched between some plastic bins, Katsumata hit a beautiful looking splash, which honestly, he may have got the worst of. Kirk kicked out though, firing up that crowd, which he then took a bundle to the face. He also ate a DVD in the middle of the ring, but he shot his shoulder up off the mat before the 3, sending the fans into even more of a frenzy. Katsumata set up some chairs and light tubes, but he must not know Brandon very well. That is a psycho driver, fuck your life. Brandon Kirk wins, and the crowd has chosen right here, right there, who they want to win this whole thing. For the last match of the opening round, John Wayne Murdoch was set to take on a mystery opponent. And that mystery opponent would be Broski Jimmy Lloyd. Well, not quite. Actually, Slade returned, running Jimmy away and destroying Murdoch with a large bundle. Now, returning against anyone else would have probably given Slade a big advantage here, but John Wayne Murdoch was on a mission of his own to win the Tournament of Survival trophy that has escaped his grasp twice now. Slade did show flashes of intensity briefly, but for the most part, we saw him get cut to shreds. At one point, he looked like he was going to stab the ref with a broken light tube, but Murdoch used the distraction to his advantage and rolled Slade up, sneaking in the pin. The match lasted a little over 5 minutes, but it was action-packed. Round 2 would see 2 BJW stars face off to see who would head to the finals. And dear Lord, don't tear me apart trying to pronounce these names. But adding to the intrigue here, Hideyoshi Kamitani, who was the current BJW Deathmatch champ, he was facing the man he took that title off of just a couple months ago in April, Yuki Ishikawa. We got another fairly quick match with tons of light tubes being smashed, but Ishikawa would get his revenge from back in April as he countered a backdrop driver into a roll-up to surprise Kamitani with the win. The fans definitely had Brandon Kirk's back in this tournament as he was out next to take on John Wayne Murdoch. I mean, all Brandon would have to do is something that he has only done once so far in his career, just beat Murdoch one-on-one. Just like in the opening round though, Brandon took on a ton of damage, but he wasn't going to go down that easy. He was even able to escape Murdoch's trademark submission that he has used to win countless matches with. The tides looked to be turning as Kirk sent Murdoch back first onto a cacti board. They had a light tube exchange where Brandon just exploded with a fury, filling the arena with that spooky dust. He shot Murdoch through the glass in the corner as the crowd cheered him on, but that was nothing compared to the spear to the outside of the ring onto this barbed wire webbing. Look at that, you could see the barbs pulling away at Murdoch's skin. It took Brandon too long in the corner of the ring, allowing Murdoch to catch him with a fistful of glass. From there, he would bring Kirk down from the top rope through a big light tube contraption with a suplex. Somehow, Kirk got his shoulder up, but fell right into Murdoch's trap and his submission. With the crowd fully chanting his name, he refused to tap out, but in the end, Brandon Kirk passed out. John Wayne Murdoch makes it to the finals of the Tournament of Survival yet again. And standing in his way would be the BJW star Yuki Ishikawa, who was making his American debut on this night. They got started right away trading light tube headshots, grabbing any and all tubes they could find. Things kept going on the outside of the ring as Murdoch was tossed off the ring apron, down through doors and dozens of tubes. Not long after that, a large structure was set up in the ring as both competitors climbed to the top of the scaffold nearby. It would be Murdoch who was chucked off the top, sending him crashing through several ultra-violent layers to the mat below. Yuki would hit a splash, going for the win, but the Duke of Hardcore not only kicked out, but he jumped up at the count of 1. Tables were then brought in and set up as they fought up to the scaffold again. If that wasn't enough, the tables were lit on fire as Murdoch leapt off with Yuki, bringing him down through the flaming tables with a swinging neckbreaker. That would be the 3 count right there, bringing an end to the tournament. John Wayne Murdoch finally captures the GCW Tournament of Survival trophy, and he moves up to 10 career tournament wins from United States companies. That is more than anyone else in history, folks. It took him several tries, but the Tournament of Survival 9 belongs to John Wayne Murdoch. Now real quick, I want to talk about a couple deathmatch tournaments that Jobber Radio is going to be sponsoring in the months to come. First up is H2O's Ultra Violent Kingdom 7. We're talking July 19th, 2024, of course. All 4 first-round matches have been announced, and we do have a mystery opponent in this tournament. We're going to see how that goes. It's been 2 years since the last Ultra Violent Kingdom. That's where Jimmy Lyon won, by the way, in case you forgot. But Jobber Radio is a proud sponsor of this event, and please, if you can, go watch it live on IWTV. I also want to talk about the return of the King of the Kill, Ruthless Pro Wrestling's King of the Kill 2, August 24th. They're back in Maybe, Michigan. Also, a lot of competitors have been announced, but no matches as of right now. This is already lining up to be one of the most stacked deathmatch tournaments of the year, so do not miss it. Again, this also will be streaming on IWTV. And yes, 3 months in a row, we got July, August, and then coming in September on September 13th, AWR's Asylum Deathmatch Tournament 5 takes place in Indy. Obviously, this far out, we haven't had any matches set up, but it has been announced that Eric Dillinger will be defending the AWR World Heavyweight Championship throughout the entire tournament, so we're going to have to see where that goes. And just like all the tournaments in the past that Jobber Radio has sponsored, I'll be breaking down each tournament with a full prediction video. I'll release it once the cards are announced, so look forward to that. And so far, you know, I don't want to brag, but last year I kind of nailed it. So just saying, watch for those videos when they drop. So not only am I going to talk about the tournament winners and a lot of titles that have changed hands, I'm also going to talk about some big news articles that have happened over this past 6 months. The first kind of big headline that I want to cover are 2 companies that have kind of went on hiatus. First company I want to talk about is Wrestle Rave, based out of Houston, Texas. You've seen them before on the monthly deathmatch rundowns, but Jobber Radio was going to be sponsoring the Death Triad 3. It was going to be on May 18th, but kind of just before there was some very unfortunate news that they dropped on Twitter. The owners, Jack and Nick, they announced that their stepfather was being placed into hospice care. They are going to focus more on their family and more on, you know, what's important, because look, we all love wrestling. This is our thing. This is our hobby. This is what we love. But it's nowhere near as important as family, obviously. They went on to thank the fans and the wrestlers they've booked over the years for the support, and just, they didn't say if they're going to be coming back. It's a little bit more of a question mark. Who knows? We will wait and see. But I just want to personally, Jobber Radio has had good communication with them. We've sponsored shows in the past. if they come back, we hope to do more in the future, but I just personally want to say thank you for everything, and hopefully we'll see you in the future. I also want to point out that WrestleRave is not a exclusive deathmatch company, but they have some of the best deathmatch wrestling in Texas, so if you need to go back and look at their library, check IWTV out. You won't be disappointed. The other company that apparently has closed up shop is ICW No Holds Barred, a company that has been featured pretty prominently here on Jobber Radio's channel. Their Volume 63 show in May was the last show that they have planned, and Danny DeMonto has been pretty kind of more upfront that ICW No Holds Barred will return in the kind of near future by the time this video comes out. I believe the rumor is August. There's been no hard date on anything yet, so we'll have to see it. Maybe soon after that, who knows. But I'm pretty sure we're going to get more ICW No Holds Barred before the end of the year. But from May till, at least right now, ICW No Holds Barred has closed up shop. The champion, I don't want to spoil anything. We're covering titles here in a minute, so I don't want to spoil that, but we're going to see what they do with their champion. And I want to mention also WrestleRave, Dmitry Alexandrov is still the WrestleRave Deathmatch champion that he, as you'll see again with that, he's defended it since they've closed up shop back in April. So we'll see where that goes. I don't know what that means for that title as well. It's currently being defended, so we'll see. ICW No Holds Barred just dropped that on August 5th, there's going to be a watch along with Danny DeMonto, along with some special guests, and apparently there is going to be a big announcement made. Now, could this be the return of ICW later this year? I don't know, maybe, but either way, you're going to have to tune in August 5th live on IWTV. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is a wrestler who retired from the deathmatch scene last March, at least in the United States, and that was Drew Parker. He had his last match against John Wayne Murdoch at GCW's Holy Smokes event. Good match. It was a great send-off. I actually put it as one of the top 5 matches that you had to watch that month, but a lot of that also came from the fact that Drew Parker is a fantastic deathmatch wrestler, one of the best in the world at the time. So his retirement from the deathmatch scene, at least in the United States, he had a couple more in Japan right after that, but that was the end of that. He was calling it quits in the deathmatch world. Still gonna wrestle, just not as a deathmatch wrestler, but he's back. He actually had one death match back in August of last year, but it wasn't in the United States. It was in the UK. But now he seems to be kind of back full swing. He even took part in TNT's Thrill Kill tournament, making it to the final round. That's a deathmatch tournament, by the way. But he will be making his GCW return at the Homecoming show on August 24th and 25th. So no match has been announced yet. We don't know if he's going to get back in a deathmatch world in the United States, but we already know he's back in, like I said, full swing, at least in the UK. So we'll see what happens, but it's kind of a big deal. Drew Parker back in the deathmatch scene. I'm going to cover it more in just a second in the championship section of this video, but there are some new deathmatch championships. New Fear City has their No Ring Deathmatch Championship. We got PWA creating a deathmatch championship. Like I said, we're going to get into more of that here in just a second, but there have been some new titles created over the past 6 months. Speaking of new, I want to talk about a new possible deathmatch company. I don't know the full details on the structure yet, but it looks like Hoodfoot is one of the faces of the company, at least. I'm talking about the Indie Death Crew. Now, right off the start of the show, Hoodfoot did say he's not the leader or anything like that. He said it's more of the fans, but obviously somebody's going to be running the show. We'll see what happens. I know a lot of stuff he posted on social media talking about this event, so again, not sure on the structure, but they had their first show here. It was titled Hell Needs More People Like You, and of course, it was held in Indy. Imagine that. At the Long Shot Bar. Really good show. It's on IWTV right now. I suggest you go check it out. Almost every person that competed on that show, you've heard their names time and time again here on the monthly Deathmatch Rundown, so I promise you'll like the show. Go watch. But I wanted to point them out because with a couple, shows going on hiatus, with WrestleRave, ICW, it's good to see a little bit of fresh blood coming in. And speaking of fresh blood, the last thing that I want to talk about is adding a couple more shows that get slotted into Jobber Radio's content, and that is going to be X-Brand Wrestling, who have been making a name for themselves lately, as well as POR Wrestling, who, honestly, I've been sleeping on them a little bit, but not anymore. Their joint show with RPW was very memorable. You need to go check that out. Again, a lot of the stuff on IWTV. I don't know if I've said that at least once or twice. A lot of stuff is on IWTV. Definitely worth your subscription, by the way. Also, Fight TV, Triller, whatever the hell it's called now. Yes, GCW, definitely worth your time. But that's it. I'm not going to sit here and plug everything. I just wanted to cover a lot of new stuff that's happened over the past 6 months. There's a lot of other things, that little tiny things that's been dropped in along the way. Yes, Ricky Shane Page is now in full swing, kind of in the deathmatch scene. And ironically enough, Atticus Kogar has announced that he's kind of going to be having 10 more, at least he said 10 more, maybe less or more, but roughly 10 more death matches in his career before he stops doing death matches. So the one thing I say about that is, which I said about Ricky Shane Page and Drew Parker, look, we love deathmatch wrestling. We're all fans of it, but you gotta respect the guys and gals who step away and when they say they're done, okay? When they say they're done, respect what they did. It's hard. This is some crazy shit. Don't give them a hard time. Respect it. Watch what they do when they move on. But just respect it when they want to step away from the deathmatch scene. You got to. But that's it. Let's end this little news portion right here. Let's keep it going. Now, since I've started this thing, the amount of deathmatch championships just continues to grow. But we're going to try to talk about, I think, is it 15 now? No, the new championship will be the 15th championship, but we are going to talk about 14 different deathmatch championships. We are going to briefly talk about every single match that I have footage of for each of these 14 championships. A whole lot to cover. It's going to go flying by. Strap in and let's do it. Coming off his second Battle of the Tough Guys win, the ICW American Deathmatch champion Hoodfoot was looking to make his 19th straight title defense in his first of 2024. At the Volume 57 show on January 27th, Hoodfoot would have to defend against the Killdozer. This ended up being a memorable back and forth main event, which saw the champ often taking charge over his challenger, who even had the home field advantage here. After covering the entire building in glass, Tremont would plant Hoodfoot down with a monster chokeslam to score the 3 and bring an end to the longest reign in this belt's history. The reign of the Killdozer begins in 2024. On March 16th, at ICW No Holds Barred's Volume 60 show, Otis Kogar would step up to the plate to face Killdozer, who would be defending the ICW American Deathmatch title for the very first time. These guys would throw their weight around before slicing each other up with several different sharp objects. Both men would then drive Kenzans into each other's skulls before Otis nearly won the match with this fall onto the Killdozer. The champ would cave Kogar's head in with this chair shot before finishing him off with a choke slam through another pane of glass. The first successful title defense is in the books for Tremont. ICW No Holds Barred's International Death Summit would take place on April 5th and would see the American Killdozer try to defend his American Deathmatch Championship against Canada's Green Phantom, New Zealand's Vic Craig, and England's Danny Darko. As you would imagine, this was pure anarchy, with loads of violence being dished out inside the ring, as well as plenty more taking place on the outside of the ring. Everyone did get a bit of offense in, but I think Darko had his sights a little more on his light beer instead of that title. With him and soon-to-be Green Phantom taken out of the mix, Killdozer and Vic would destroy each other with light tubes before the Killdozer would plant him down with that choke slam to lock in his second successful title defense. Just 2 weeks later, on April 19th in Tennessee, the Killdozer would be putting his ICW American Deathmatch title up yet again, but this time against Brett Eisen, and this time inside of a cage. Now, this all went down at ICW No Holds Barred's Pit Fighter X 19 show, and boy was the crowd behind Brett the whole way in this one. These headbutts would bust each competitor open, but it was Killdozer's fork that really cranked open those blood faucets. Doors would also be on the menu as they each got put through one. The Killdozer would conceal a cinder block, which he used to block a strike from Eisen, and then promptly chokeslammed him onto a door to pick up another 3-count win. The ICW American Deathmatch Championship would be on the line the very next night at the Volume 62 show, but the Killdozer would not be defending his belt. That is because the Bulldozer, Matt Tremont, decided to show up instead. His opponent would be a dear friend and a man looking to make a statement, and that would be Cody Manhorn. Cody came out like a house on fire, but would crash and burn back down to earth.
I've been doing this for 17 fucking years! Come on, Cody!
When I say Tremont beat the hell out of Cody, I don't want you to think I'm mistaken here. Through most of this match, I worried for his life. But after each and every devastating move, Cody kept getting up and moving forward. And for a split second, it looked like he had the major upset win, but this gigantic choke slam followed by a Death Valley driver onto tubes, that would put an end to Cody's last-minute rally. This was an emotional match for both of these guys, and most of all, it was fun to watch. On the last show before ICW No Holds Barred's hiatus, the Killdozer was back to defend the American Deathmatch Championship on the Volume 63 show against 440's Atticus Kogar. Some cinder blocks would shatter the back as well as the ankle of Kogar, but when some carpet strips only drew laughter from the Killdozer, Atticus broke out his trademark yellow skewers. He then converted the champ into a human pincushion. When Atticus got his hair tangled up in this barbed wire board, Tremont had no problem helping him out with that. This huge choke slam should have been the end to the match, but of course 440 showed up and had to save their buddy. They would deconstruct the ring, leaving nothing but a death trap. Everything just kept breaking down. After kicking out of this brain hemorrhage, Kogar skewered referee Shiny Shoes and just chucked him out of the ring. We would get one last brain hemorrhage onto the exposed ring, but the champ wouldn't stay down. As a last resort, Atticus grabbed the excess chains and choked Tremont out. We have a new champion, ladies and gentlemen. Atticus Kogar and 440 leave ICW with the American Deathmatch Championship, just as ICW No Holds Barred goes on its hiatus. The Wrestle Rave Deathmatch champion Dmitry Alexandrov arrived at the X7 event on February 17th, looking to defend against Uncivil Satu Jin. The whole first half of this match saw these guys brawling all over the arena with plenty of chairs, trash cans, and light tubes sneaking their way into this match. When I say light tubes, I mean quite a bit of light tubes, by the way. This powerbomb through a door wouldn't be enough to put Jin away, but after carving away at his forehead with this scissor bat and a couple more perfectly placed light tubes, Dmitry would roll Satu Jin up for the 3 count. Alexandrov looks to be starting out 2024 on the right foot. Joel Bateman made another tour to the United States from Australia to challenge Dmitry Alexandrov for his Wrestle Rave Deathmatch Championship at the Jack of All Trades event on March 30th. And what a main event we got, as Joel did everything he could to go back home with that title in his possession. He targeted the limbs of the champ quite a bit, and despite this gusher from the scissor bat early on, he brought the fight to the champ on his own turf. No matter what though, Dmitry kept firing up until he brought Bateman off the top rope with his trademark maneuver down through a door and dozens of light tubes. Mark it down as another successful title defense for Dmitry Alexandrov. Even with Wrestle Rave going on hiatus earlier in the month, Dmitry Alexandrov was looking to defend the Wrestle Rave Deathmatch Championship at Midwest Territories Paulcade 5 event. This took place on April 21st. With John Wade Murdoch being his opponent, this would be no easy task. Before the match, Murdoch noted that they really weren't allowed to get too ultra-violent on this show, so he enacted rejects rules, meaning there would, of course, be no rules. As you can see, though, this didn't quite work out the way he planned. Even after fending off multiple rejects, Dmitry was able to outlast all of the trash can shots and chair shots to allow Murdoch to nearly cripple himself. Alexandrov would drive his challenger down through a trash can to score the impressive victory. So with no future Wrestle Rave shows planned, we're just going to have to follow the Deathmatch title and see what comes of it. On March 2nd at RPW's Animosity event, Eric Dillinger returned to the company to challenge a man who has been on an absolute tear so far this year, the Kamikaze champion, Remington Roar. This would actually be his first title defense of 2024, and it's safe to say these guys did not disappoint. Few wrestlers in the entire deathmatch scene can match Roar's raw power, and Dillinger found that out in a big way in this match. This really ended up being a challenge of Dillinger's high flying versus Roar's strength, and well, some ultra violence mixed in, of course. This decapitating lariat led to the end, where Roar slammed his lifeless challenger down with the Extinction event in the middle of the ring to take home the win. RPW invade New Jersey on April 7th to host Miasma, and that is where the RPW Kamikaze champion Remington Roar would try his best to fend off Vic Craig, who traveled all the way to the US for the first time from New Zealand. This would be a tooth and nail death match, which also consisted of some thumbtacks that were stuck into the tongue of Craig. And speaking of those nails, we got to see plenty being utilized here, including a full bed of them. To finish off his challenger, Roar would shoot Vic up for his trademark extinction event and bring him crashing down to the mat to finish him off. Roar's kamikaze reign continues, as well as his hot streak. Ruthless Pro Wrestling teamed up with POR Wrestling to host Stuntin' on him on June 9th, and that is where the current RPW Kamikaze champion, the Carnivore Remington Roar, put his belt on the line against POR's Kamikaze. So try not to get that confused, but this would be a best 2 out of 3 falls light tube log cabin death match. Kamikaze actually scored the first point with this double stomp, driving Roar down into that first log cabin. Roar would be able to tie the score up though with this razor's edge through another cabin set up in the corner of the ring. Things would only get worse for the current POR World Champion. Both men would then slam down through that next cabin at the same time, so they found themselves going into sudden death. As they made their way into the crowd, they came across a large cabin of light tubes, and that is where Roar would land his extinction event onto the tubes to bring a close to the match. Remington Roar pushes on, still your RPW Kamikaze champion. Homeless Jimmy came into 2024 the Crimson Crown Wrestling Supreme Violence Champion and wouldn't have to defend his title until May 30th during the Games of Supreme Violence 2 tournament. If he wanted to leave as the champion, he would have to defend the title in all 3 rounds, but hey, at least he'd also be leaving with a trophy. In round 1, he faced off against Lazarus in a Guns N' Roses death match. While Lazarus did get some offense in midway through the match, this was all Jimmy. The champ would take Lazarus down with a drop toe hold onto some roses and immediately lock in a chokehold. He would just have to grind some of those rose thorns into the face of his challenger to get him to tap out. In round 2 of the tournament, Jimmy would have to defend the title against one of the top no-ring deathmatch wrestlers on the planet, Casanova Valentine. I think Homeless Jimmy took that as a challenge because they would brawl outside of the ring for quite a while. Ironically, Casanova didn't fully get in control of this match until they went back into the ring. With Jimmy's trademark shopping cart laying in the middle of the ring, the champ would end up driving Valentine's skull into the cart with a massive DDT to pick up the victory. Looking to make his 3rd title defense on the night, Homeless Jimmy made it to the finals of the Games of Supreme Violence 2 tournament to take on the returning deathmatch veteran Carnage. And right out of the gate, Carnage was slammed onto a literal bed of light tubes. They traded shots back and forth as blood drenched both of their faces. I do think Homeless Jimmy got the worst of the gushers, though I thought he may have died at one point. The champ looked to use his trademark shopping cart, which helped him get past Valentine in the 2nd round, but this time it came back to bite him as Carnage drove him down spine first onto it. That is the 3 count, and there you have it, folks. Carnage returns to CCW, winning the Games of Supreme Violence 2 tournament and ends Homeless Jimmy's streak at 333 days as champion. Rita Yamashita held the GCW Ultra Violent Championship all through 2023, and to kick off the start of 2024, she had a tough task ahead of her in John Wayne Murdoch. At the No Compadre show on January 12th, Rena leapt from the balcony, wiping out her challenger as well as a few other fans, all before they even stepped foot in the ring. We got a classic skewers to the forehead DDT combo as well. There were staples, there were air raid crashes, there were ball grabs, there were ball punches, and there were doors all used in this one. As Murdoch tried to deliver 10 punches to Rena in the corner, she scooped him up and slammed him down through a door with her trademark Splash Mountain Bomb to secure yet another successful title defense. During WrestleMania weekend on April 6th, GCW held Effie's Big Gay Brunch 9. That's where Billy Dixon would try his best to once again enter the deathmatch world to try and dethrone Rina Yamashita on this epic run of hers. Now, this wouldn't be the bloodiest match in Rina's list of title matches, but we did see some stiff chair shots and a rough-looking landing through a door. Rina would land a big splash after a chair shot to the head to close the door on Billy's chances. This marks an insane 19th straight successful GCW ultra-violent title defense for Rina, who has held the title now since August 13th, 2022. The H2O Danny Havoc Hardcore Champion Bam Sullivan would face the monumental task of defending his title in H2O's first Cage of Hell match on January 13th. Bam's 5 challengers would be the Killdozer himself, Mouse, Neil Diamond Cutter, Alex Stretch, and Jimmy Chondo Lion. This would be chaotic all the way through, seeing everybody dish out and take plenty of punishment, including this Tower of Doom. There would also be elimination rules, however, and the first person sent packing would be Alex Stretch, who fell through a crazy contraption to the floor after being decked by the Killdozer. I probably should have mentioned that this would be pinfalls, submissions, and hitting the floor that gets you eliminated. There was a double elimination on tap next as Neil Diamond Cutter hit his rolling DVD onto Chondo through even more fuckery on the outside. Mouse would be double teamed and slammed face first into an exploding side of the cage.
Oh, no. Oh, shit! Oh, no! Holy shit!
Needless to say, he was promptly eliminated, leaving it down to just Bam and Tremont. Bam countered a DVD to spear the Killdozer through a pane of glass, where he scored the 3 count and the win. On February 17th at H2O's Causing Havoc event, Bam Sullivan may have bitten off more than he can chew after claiming he was going to defend the Danny Havoc Hardcore title through each round of the Unlucky 13 tournament. In the first round, he did just that by outlasting Christian Ross, JB Anderson, and Lady Blakely. Things were looking bright for the champ at first, because in round 2 he would take on a bitter rival of his, Jimmy Chondo Lion. Even after tearing their bare feet apart, Bam was looking to coast into the finals, but a low blow followed by his own championship belt to the skull, that would cost Sullivan everything. Chondo shocked the crowd by winning the title for the first time in his career. Now, if Jimmy wanted to leave tonight with the Danny Havoc Hardcore Championship, he would have to get past Neil Diamond Cutter in the final round. The lights were dimmed down for an electrified light tube death match. Even though Chondo would punish and berate his challenger for most of the match, Neil dug down deep, finding that fighting spirit we all know he has. To his credit, Chondo would get his shoulder up after this rolling DVD, but Neil grabbed the first thing he could find to wrap around his opponent's throat, and it happened to be an extension cord. He proceeded to choke out the champ to win the H2O Danny Havoc Hardcore Championship for the first time in his career, and he would also be taking home the first Deathmatch tournament win in 2024. On March 8th at H2O's show titled Praying, Neil Diamond Cutter would try to defend his newly won Danny Havoc Hardcore World Championship against the wrestler creature double feature, Mouse. I'm telling you right now, everything under the sun was used in this title match. I mean, just look at the ring. And kind of as you would expect, Neil caught Mouse in several different mousetraps. Mouse would definitely get his fair share of offense in here, but after this rolling DVD onto a shopping cart, Neil would land himself his first successful title defense. With WrestleMania season here, Australia's own, the smash hit, Joel Bateman made his way to New Jersey to join Colby Corino in challenging Neil Diamond Cutter for the H2O Danny Havoc Hardcore Championship. Competing head-to-head with Raw, this would all be going down at Monday Night Death 5 in the main event. There were tons of light tubes and carpet strips being used here, but the champ said screw that and just felt like slamming a cinder block into the knee of Bateman. Don't worry though, he would get his revenge. In fact, the champ was having a rough night as all three of these guys were firing on all cylinders. There was a lightning quick ending here where Joel dropped Neil with a tiger driver onto a chair, took an exploding shot to the head, followed by Corino laying him out with an assault driver onto a pile of cinder blocks. And then Neil drove Colby down into Bateman with that rolling DVD. What a match here, folks. Neil Diamond Cutter pinned both men to walk out still your Danny Havoc Hardcore World Champion. H2O held its 4th Hustle Cup on April 2nd, and that is where UK's hottest deathmatch wrestler, Lou Nixon, would be making his H2O debut. And this debut would be a big one because he would be challenging Neil Diamond Cutter for his Danny Havoc Hardcore Championship. Right out of the gate, Neil meant business as he pulverized Nixon with cinder blocks. The pace of this match didn't let up for a single second as they had their foot to the floor all the way through. This match saw no blood, but dear lord, it was one of the hardest hitting matches all year long so far. Don't sleep on this match if you missed it, trust me on that. Neil landed his rolling Death Valley driver onto a stack of cinder blocks to put his challenger away for the 3 count. On April 13th, Jimmy Chondo held his first and probably only event called Running Off the Door. On that show, he would have Neil Diamond Cutter set to defend his H2O Danny Havoc Hardcore title against Low Life Louie, AZK, and Anthrax. In a match that saw thousands of thumbtacks, tons of different sharp objects cutting through skin, and some cinder blocks, we almost had this thing end with a finger poke of doom. Anthrax almost manhandled his way to victory, but took too much time bringing chairs into the ring, allowing Neil to recover and hit that rolling DVD as well as the Honey Badger Splash to take home the win. Painted Red Entertainment hosted a no-ring deathmatch event on April 20th. Neil Diamond Cutter brought his H2O Danny Havoc Hardcore title to defend against a man he knows quite well, Alex Stretch. Neil had a hard time dealing with the king of the no ring, as Stretch came close a few times to becoming the new champion. After destroying nearly every item in the room, Alex would pile everything on top of each other to deliver that final blow to Neil. The next thing he knows, the champ hoisted him up into the air and drove him down onto that debris with that rolling DVD. That is all she wrote, folks. Neil Diamond Cutter retains. I want to do a quick shout out to both Andy Roach and Painted Red Entertainment for the footage that you guys just saw in this one. At H2O Panic Switch on May 11th, former Danny Havoc Hardcore champion Brandon Kirk was looking to get his title back against the current champion, Neil Diamond Cutter. The champ did his best to ensure we won't have any little Kirks running around H2O anytime soon. That is when things started to turn sour for Neil, though. It looked like this pile driver was going to be the end of Neil's reign, but he managed to get his shoulder up. And then this pile driver happened, and Neil still managed to kick out. That fighting spirit of the Honey Badger appeared too much for Kirk as Neil countered with a massive rolling DVD onto a pile of chairs and dropped that cherry on top with one final splash. Great comeback win here for Neil Diamond Cutter as he keeps the title in his possession. June 22nd, night one of H2O's 8th anniversary show, it saw Neil Diamond Cutter put his Danny Havoc Hardcore Championship on the line against Anthrax, who has had this opportunity before, but never in a one-on-one setting. This Saul Reborn deathmatch saw each competitor handcuffed to the top rope as they were forced to dig through thumbtacks to find the key to escape. After finally breaking free, Anthrax quickly overpowered the champion. And I don't think you can have a Saul Reborn deathmatch without an actual Saul. A rolling DVD and lion salt would not be enough to keep Anthrax down for the 3. It would actually take this knockout shot with a skillet. He walks away with the win, but this would only be the start of a tough weekend for Neil. The very next night, Casey Kirk returned to action for H2O for night 2 of their 8th anniversary show to challenge Neil Diamond Cutter for that Danny Havoc Hardcore title. The ropes would come down and be replaced with barbed wire, as the boards would also be exposed for this brutal main event. We got to see a little bit of everything here. I'm talking chairs, light tubes, more light tubes, more chairs and more light tubes, ladders, staple guns, bear traps even, and we got thumbtacks which were shoved into Casey's cheeks. They would both take a nasty spill through a cluster of tubes set up on some chairs. After each of them spent every bit of energy they had, Neil snatched Kirk up and dove out of the ring, smashing through a door and pane of glass with that rolling DVD. With this win, Neil Diamond Cutter already has 8 successful title defenses in just 5 months. I've scoured the internet for footage of the XICW Extreme Intense Championship match between Tommy Vendetta and Crazy King at the Lucha Lot Party show, but I came up short. All I can tell you is this was a rematch from their ICW No Holds Barred match last August, and that Tommy Vendetta won yet again and remains the champion, but I'm sorry, don't have any footage from the show. Years of history went into this next match at the XICW Sheik and Malcolm Monroe Sr. Memorial Show on June 8th. XICW Extreme Intense champion Tommy Vendetta has had problems with Alex Weir for a while now, so it all came down to this. And as you would expect, this would be a hard-hitting match where Alex pulled out all of his best Ninja Turtle moves. Donatello would be proud, but Vendetta, he was not impressed. Tommy would connect with his backpack cannonball into the corner, causing Weir to grow desperate and deliver a low blow. 2 could play at that game, though. Tommy would go on to hit 4 pile drivers onto his trademark Legos to finally put his rival away. Thomas Oliver Vendetta has now held on to that XICW Extreme Intense title for over 700 days and counting. On May 25th, Bam Sullivan was set to defend his Bloodstorm Pro Deathcore Championship for the first time since winning it back in November. At the show titled Enjoy the Violence, Bam found himself in a three-way elimination match trying to fend off Alex Stretch and Mouse. There would be no pinfalls or submissions in this one. The only way to win is by putting your opponents through a pane of glass to eliminate them. This double sliced bread didn't count for any eliminations, and unfortunately, Mouse ended up cutting his wrist pretty badly from it. Now, I did say this was a three-way match, but suddenly the Carver showed up, slinging Bam through a pane of glass, eliminated him from the match. He then slammed both Stretch and Mouse down through another pane of glass, so I guess somehow he wins the title? They say it's official. I mean, Carver won the Tri-State title earlier in the night, and now he's leaving with 2 titles in his possession. Schlack was stripped of the XPW King of the Deathmatches title back on February 4th, ending his reign at an impressive and scary 666 days. So at XPW Alive and Kicking on February 25th, a new champion would be crowned. This match would end up being an 8-person Hell's Gate gauntlet match that lasted well over an hour, so let's get to the highlights. Judge Joe Dredd drew the short straw, coming out first. Number 2 would be former number 1 contender Eric Ryan, and with Eric, you knew there was going to be some terracotta pots finding their way into the mix. These two got this gauntlet match started out strong, and I hate that I can't show more from this match in general, but Dredd planted a very bloody Ryan down to the mat with the death sentence to eliminate him first. Dr. Redacted would come out as the 3rd competitor, and naturally, that only ramped up the intensity. God, I just cringe so hard every time I see Dredd hammer this gusset into the skull of Dr. Redacted with that mallet. The blind trash can spot cost Doc pretty big here. It allowed Dredd to hit a death sentence, this time onto the trash can, and to finish him off, he landed it one more time onto the mat. Their murder surgeon has been eliminated, much to the fans' displeasure. Out next would be Tarzan Duran, who brought his blunt and his agility into this match, looking to eliminate the judge. He really was well on his way, looking very good in this match, but maybe he should have put that blunt out early on. Dredd would get a hold of it and put it out on Tarzan's eye. He then hit his trademark move yet again to dispatch his 3rd opponent. The next person to take their shot at Dredd would be Dirty Ron, who would try to use more light tubes, chairs, and ladders. Could he have been the one to eliminate Dredd? We'll actually never know, because JJ Escobar ran out attacking Ron, and he fed him to the judge for another death sentence. Judge Joe Dredd now finds himself taking on his 5th straight opponent, which would be none other than the MAGA Butcher. A brawl into the crowd and even out into the street took place here, as Dredd tried his best just to stay alive. And even when the match got back into the ring, this was all Butcher. If it wasn't for Stephen Jury causing this distraction, Dredd wouldn't have been able to surprise Butcher with this roll-up to take the shocking 3 count. From one legend to the next, out came Mickey Knuckles, the XPW Women's Champion. Just when Judge thought he was gonna get lucky, Mickey pulled a fast one on him. Then again, maybe he did. I don't know, things got a little weird, okay? And besides all of that, Dredd may have been the luckiest person in XPW this night, because in came another distraction, this time in the form of Kat Martini. As Mickey turned around, she caught a Tokyo Tower to the face, and that would be the end of her. We would get a 3rd straight legend. We're talking about the XPW legend Homeless Jimmy would come out to the ring next, and somehow, after over an hour, Dredd pushed forward, taking this fight to now his 7th opponent. This shot right here cut Jimmy open badly on the top of his head. After all of this, it would be Dredd who was in full control here. He got a little too cocky, and Dredd joined Jimmy up onto his shopping cart, only to be driven straight down onto it with a massive DDT. Finally, that would be enough to put Judge Joe Dredd away. He made it all the way to the end, but fell just short. Homeless Jimmy leaves alive and kicking, the new XPW King of the Deathmatch champion. On April 13th, Homeless Jimmy would put his King of the Deathmatch title up for the first time against his challenger, who would be the murder surgeon himself, Dr. Redacted. They would fight on the outside of the ring for quite some time, with each man getting his licks in. Redacted had no problem using himself as a weapon several times in this match. However, this swanton off the top was miscalculated, and Jimmy just moved out of the way. After crashing and burning onto the cart, Jimmy planted Doc's skull into it one more time to finish him off, meaning Homeless Jimmy is still your King of the Deathmatch champion. IWA Deep South Heavyweight Champion Bryant Woods would make his XPW debut at an event titled Look What You Made Me Do on June 23rd. He would compete in a title for title match against XPW's King of the Deathmatch's champion, Homeless Jimmy. Things would get started with a slow, methodical brawl around the ringside area, but once Jimmy's shopping cart came into play, business picked up. The strength of Woods just lawn dart the cart into Jimmy and then lift up the King of the Deathmatches with ease to body slam him onto it was scary impressive. And guys, I think Jimmy's spine may have been snapped in half. At one point, they decked one another with bundles of tubes and then took each other down with a double clothesline. The ref would count to 3 with them having their arms across each other's chest. The match would be ruled a draw, meaning Woods retains the IWA Deep South Heavyweight title and Homeless Jimmy remains your XPW King of the Deathmatch champ. To kick off the RPW Rust Belt title matches in 2024, champion Tommy Vendetta would be issuing an open challenge at RPW's Animosity event on March the 2nd. Much to Tommy's surprise, the other half of the Michigan Pillars and his best friend, Malcolm Monroe III, was the one who answered that challenge. Oh, and just to piss off the fans, Tommy tried his best to destroy all weapons around this ring. But that wouldn't stop MM3 from doing his best to dethrone his buddy, though. Vendetta would rip Malcolm's boots off and slam him down onto a pile of Legos. Just as that pain started to register, Tommy rolled Malcolm up, grabbing onto his pants for extra leverage, and he did his friend dirty. But I guess you gotta do what you gotta do. Vendetta escaped still the Rust Belt champ. On April 7th, Tommy Vendetta was scheduled to defend his RPW Rust Belt Championship at RPW's Miasma show, but just a couple of nights earlier at the ICW event, this chair shot from Otis Kogar busted up Tommy pretty badly, where he said he could not compete tonight. So defending that title in his place would be his partner, Malcolm Monroe III. Not an easy task, though, because this match would be a 4-way, including the man that injured Tommy. We're talking Otis Kogar, Hoodfoot, and England's own Lou Nixon. Speaking of Nixon, his back would be cut up pretty badly from a light tube shot from Otis. Oh, and by the way, I gotta shout out Vendetta, who joined the match on commentary. Very entertaining stuff.
And nobody. Oh my God! Darren, get over there. You gotta check on him. Darren, get over there. Check on him.
Malcolm brought in Tommy's Legos and was about to seal the deal when Otis blasted him in the head with a bundle of tubes. With Malcolm flying off the ropes, he fell right into the chokehold from Nixon. MM3 is out cold, ladies and gentlemen. Lou Nixon takes the victory, and the RPW Rust Belt Championship is headed to England. The RPW Rust Belt made it to the UK for the first time on April 14th for KCW's Surprise You're Dead show. That's where Lou Nixon would be making his first title defense against Franco Fate. With the KCW Openweight title also on the line in this match, things would kind of end up being more of a strong style, a little bit of hardcore, rather than a full-on death match. We did see Franco wipe himself out on a table on the outside, but was able to recover and powerbomb Nixon through another door in the corner. It wouldn't be long before a bloody Nixon planted his knee into Fate's face with a go to sleep and then latched onto him with a rear naked choke. Fate would fade away, and there you go, Lou Nixon retains the Rust Belt Championship. We head to West Yorkshire in England on May 4th for Lou Nixon's next RPW Rust Belt title defense. Rise Underground held their 4th no ring, no rules event, and the person challenging Nixon in this Underground Fight Club rules match would be Dara Diablo. This would be another double title match because Nixon also happens to be the Rise European Deathmatch champion. Lou's nunchuck light tubes were used against him, and later bottle caps were even used, which was kind of new to me. At one point, Leonardo Darwin threatened to cash in his check-in-the-mail briefcase to try and steal the title, but as Dara confronted him, he caught a swift kick, ramming the briefcase directly into his face. Lou pulled Dara down from behind into that rear naked choke, and he put Dara to sleep to retain both titles. Coming to you from Leeds, England, Rise Underground hosted the Miles Dad Show on May 31st. The RPW Rust Belt champion Lou Nixon came to the ring looking like a straight-up demon, as he would once again be putting his Rust Belt on the line along with his European Deathmatch title. Isaac North would be his challenger, and he was sporting quite a unique look himself. They would pummel each other with barbed wire, and speaking of that barbed wire, that would be the preferred tool of destruction in this match for sure. That is until the Weed Whacker was introduced. Violent Vendetta handed North a rag after dousing it in chloroform, but he dropped it after this head kick from the champ. Nixon covered his face with the rag as he also locked in his rear naked choke. Isaac North was out like a light, and that is the bell. Lou Nixon retains both of his titles yet again. TNT Extreme hosted their second Thrill Kill tournament on June 2nd, and not only would Lou Nixon be competing in the tournament, he would have to defend his RPW Rust belt in the first round against Tim Strange. Sadly, the event hasn't been released yet, so I have no footage to share with you, but all I can tell you is Lou Nixon did win that first round match, and he remains your RPW Rust Belt champion. The 5-time Horror Slam Deathmatch champion Chuck Stein would be walking into the Heartbreak Hotel event on February 16th. He would try to defend his title against a weed whacker wielding JJ Escobar. JJT setting the champ on fire here, but luckily the ref didn't have a lighter. Dear Lord, this match would not be for the weak of heart. There would be a close-up of syringes being driven into JJ's arm, and that would only be a taste of things to come. Escobar pulled out a nail gun out from under the ring. Yes, I said that, a nail gun. Things would backfire on him, and the fans screamed in horror as JJ Escobar was literally nailed down to the ring. I will say it would make for one of Chuck's easiest pinfalls though, so I guess that's the glass half full way to look at this, but either way, Chuck Stein remains your champion. The Carnivore, Remington Roar, would be the next wrestler to challenge Chuck Stein for his Horror Slam Deathmatch Championship. On March 13th at Unlucky Charms, light tubes would surround the ring as these two guys went to war. Early on, Stein was getting absolutely pounded by his challenger, and these syringes into the knuckles did not help matters either. The shift in momentum came as Chuck jumped out of the way of a spear, sending Roar smashing headfirst through a wall of tubes. Once back into the ring, Chuck was able to slam his challenger down onto a log cabin of light tubes with a DVD to take home that victory. Now, he did take the brunt of the damage for sure, but either way, Chuck walks out still your Horror Slam Deathmatch champ. On May 10th, the Horror Slam Deathmatch champion had to best both Dr. Redacted and Drake Younger, who were both making their debuts by the way, if he wanted to walk out still the champ. This insane triple threat match took place at Horror Slam's Crimson Mask event. The fight would go all throughout the crowd, seeing more than enough light tubes, wild chair shots, high flying, complete 40-yard dashes, just high intensity all the way around. The end would come though after Drake would hit a frog splash onto the dock, but Chuck would slide in with a quick roll up on Younger, putting his full weight into it so he couldn't get out. Just like that, Chuck Stein retains in a big way. And heads up, I wish I had more than fan cam footage, thanks Dramatic Wrestling by the way, but I tried to go through Horror Slam's new streaming type service, but it just didn't work. New Deathmatch title time. The first event for New Fear City in 2024 was titled Goodbye Cruel World. The main event saw a four-way between Dominic De Niro, Kit Osborne, Casanova Valentine, and of course, Cruel. Now this was officially a four-way, but a deal was clearly made here between Kit and Cruel. The match would be a ton of fun with action taking place everywhere in the building. Cass would be tossed off the stage through some doors and tubes, leaving De Niro to be laid out with a sickening thud. He tried to dodge the double teaming, but to no avail. Cruel watched as Kit pinned De Niro to win the match. And it wasn't until afterwards that Kit pulled out a title with his face on it and declared himself the new and first ever NFC No Ring Deathmatch champion. February 18th rolled around, and along with it, another NFC No Ring Deathmatch title match. At Casanova Valentine's Day Massacre, the first and self-proclaimed champion, Kit Osborne, took on an unlikely opponent that's been trash-talking him, Simon Gotch. These guys landed a ton of strikes, including just enough European uppercuts. The champ would pull off a beautiful counter to drive Gotch back through a door, but still felt the need to resort to shady tactics with this low blow that led to a win. And with that, Kit Osborne's first title defense is now behind him. New Fear City and Circle 6 teamed up on April 3rd for a kickoff party to Murder Mania weekend. That is where the No Ring Deathmatch champion Kit Osborne faced off against challenger Bam Sullivan. I just want to point out, I like how they had to head over to the merch table to grab weapons, but this was an extremely fun show with a great crowd. It shouldn't be a shocker that Kit would resort to his dirty tactics, hitting Bam with some pocket sand to the face, followed by a stunner and, of course, a low blow. He rolled Bam up, grabbing onto his tights, which was just the icing on the cake. Kit leaves still the NFC No Ring Deathmatch champion. Later in the night, Casanova Valentine debuted the new belt design so Kit could toss his version of it out to the trash. New Fear City held Murder Mania this year in Philadelphia on April 5th. The first no-ring deathmatch champion, Kit Osborne, tried his best to avoid this match with Dominic De Niro, but it was inevitable. Jesus, look at the force these guys were using to obliterate those light tubes. Yeah, needless to say, this was a hard-hitting affair. Kit even went for his low blow that's helped him hold on to the title up to this point, but Dominic saw it coming a mile away. De Niro would begin to hog-tie Osborne and then just straight up started choking him out. Just before losing consciousness, Kit tapped out, meaning that Dominic De Niro is your new Fear City no-ring deathmatch champion. Now, I do not have any footage of this, but Circle 6 held one of their Ballroom Blitz events on June 7th, and that saw Dominic De Niro successfully defend his title against Hardway Heater. Now, this has to be a first. At NFC's This Is Performance Art on June 20th, Dominic De Niro granted a 3-on-1 handicap match for his no-ring deathmatch title against Killian McMurphy, Big Dust, and the puppet, Brad Suit. This was fun and out of control, as you would probably imagine. And then again, at times, it also got pretty violent. After dishing out several stiff rights to all three of his opponents, by the way, De Niro would get McMurphy down on the floor and wrap his sleeve of his tracksuit around his neck, choking him out. Killian tapped out, and Dominic De Niro beat the numbers advantage successfully, defending his NFC no-ring deathmatch title. Now, I don't have any footage from this event either, as it was another Circle 6 Barroom Blitz event, but on June 29th, Dominic De Niro once again successfully defended the no-ring deathmatch championship, this time against Otis Kogar. By the way, if anyone has any footage of these matches at the Barroom Blitz events, hit me up. I love to document everything I can. We have a new deathmatch title coming to the rundown, and we are going to be covering the Pro Wrestling Alliance Deathmatch Championship going forward. At X Brand Wrestling's Glitch in the Matrix event on May 17th, Brax took on Alex Stretch for that vacant title. Even though Stretch gave up a big size advantage, he was able to draw first blood. And by that, I mean Brax had a full-on gusher going here. But Stretch wouldn't make it out of this match unscathed by any means. Alex Stretch would be tossed into a bushel of barbed wire, and ironically enough, he would place that same barbed wire across Brax's chest and drive it down into him with this splash to pick up that 3 count. Ladies and gentlemen, we have ourselves a PWA Deathmatch champion, and we will follow this title's lineage from here on out. Out to New Jersey we go, where X Brand Wrestling held their ultra-violent house party on June 23rd. PWA Deathmatch champion Alex Stretch would be defending his newly won title for the first time against Kevin Chaos, who was nearly blown away at the start of this thing with all these fireworks. These two fought all over the shelter, on top of a truck, down this dirt road, around the fans, back up the dirt road, oh, and yeah, in the ring some more as well. Kudos to Kevin Chaos, by the way, who wrestled this entire match with barbed wire tangled up in his hair. Even so, he would get slammed into yet another barbed wire board to put an end to the match. Alex Stretch retains and is still your Pro Wrestling Alliance Deathmatch champion. So if you've watched the monthly Deathmatch rundown before, you know I do 5 must-see matches that you better not skip over, but we're talking 6 months here, so somehow, some way, I'm breaking down 10 must-see matches that you can't miss. When you're talking about that big of a gap, there are a lot of very good death matches that took place in the 6 months, but I've had to choose the more unique matches. Some of the very good matches you're not going to see here because they just didn't quite stand out enough amongst the rest. And trust me, it bugs me that I can't show you everything, but we got to break it down to just 10. We can't go overboard. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen, 10 must-see matches from 2024, January through June. Let's do it. Now, with this episode already going on way too long, I'm going to breeze through these, so don't think these matches aren't worth your time, because they definitely are. I have to start with the climax to one of the best feuds that's taken place so far in 2024. Mance Warner versus Effie inside of the Cage of Survival. In my opinion, this was the perfect ending to a great feud. I've been saying the deathmatch world needs more stories, and these two, along with GCW, proved that it's worth it. GCW held its 9th Tournament of Survival in June, and I agree with the majority that one of the matches that you can't miss from this year's biggest tournament was Brandon Kirk versus Shunma Katsumata. Now, not only was this just a good death match, but Kirk won the crowd over in a big way in his first opportunity in TOS. In fact, he quickly became the fan favorite to win the entire thing just from this match alone. Still relatively new to the scene, X Brand Wrestling hosted their Glitch in the Matrix event on May 17th, and we were treated to a good yet somewhat emotional 3-way main event. Chris Bradley found himself in the middle of Danny DeMonto and Drake Younger and kept up with this all the way through. Now, Danny claimed this was one of his top 5 death matches ever, and I'm not quite sure about that because he's got a pretty deep catalog of matches, but I will say this was one worth watching, and it can be found right now on IWTV. Circle 6 and Loco Wrestling teamed up down in Houston for the show Till I Die. Just one night after competing in that brutal triple threat match for X Brand Wrestling, Drake Younger went one-on-one with Orin Veidt in yet another brutal death match. You can see these two just clicked, and quite honestly, they stole the show. While watching this, it's hard to believe that Drake is coming off of a broken back not long ago, while this was only Orin's second match on the year. The best part about all of this is you can go watch this show for free right now on Circle 6's YouTube channel. What happens when you put two of the most exciting deathmatch guys in the scene right now in an impromptu match together? Well, that is exactly what happened when Dr. Redacted and Eric Dillinger faced off at the Volume 63 show for ICW No Holds Barred in May. This match is filled with fun and memorable moments as these two continue to show the entire indie scene that their intensity is unmatched. Do yourself a favor and go watch this right now if you haven't. Yes, you would need to invest over an hour into this next match, but it's more than worth it. XPW was in need of a new King of the Deathmatch champion, and at their show Alive and Kicking, there would be an 8-person Hell's Gate Gauntlet match to crown that new champ. Judge Joe Dredd would without a doubt turn in a breakout performance here, but this was chock full of deathmatch legends as well as some of other top deathmatch wrestlers in the scene today. It's a wild ride filled with twists and turns, and I gotta recommend it. We got another cage match hitting the list as H2O held its first Cage of Hell match in January. Bam Sullivan would try to defend the Danny Havoc Hardcore title against 5 other opponents, and even though things got a little crowded, the action was non-stop with several memorable death-defying spots. To be honest, this match gave me some flashbacks to some of those better moments from those mid-2010s CZW Cage of Death matches. We can't even talk about the first half of 2024 without mentioning the match of Jay Sawyer's career so far. At ICW No Holds Barred's Volume 57 show in January, Danny DeMonto gave Jay a chance of a lifetime to prove himself in the deathmatch scene, and quite frankly, I thought he knocked it out of the park. The crowd got super into this match, with the crowd chanting for Jay to please come back when it was all said and done. Now, oddly enough, we haven't seen Jay Sawyer return yet, but this match proved that he needs to get more looks, and maybe one day he will return to the chains. ICW No Holds Barred held an International Death Summit WrestleMania weekend, and to kick off that show, Yusaku Ito made his United States debut to fight 440 member Eric Ryan. Per usual, Eric found ways to uniquely utilize his now trademarked terracotta pots, while Ito pulled out all the stops for this debut. Being the first match on the card, I was afraid they were going to use up every light tube in the building because they made it rain shards of glass in there. This was a fast-paced, high-energy death match that should not be skipped. 2024 seems to be a big year for cage matches because on June 22nd, the Wrestling Revolver held their Cage of Horrors event, and in that main event, we saw One Called Manders, Matthew Justice, and Mance Warner break a record for a number of doors used in a single match. Of course, I just made that record up, but they had to have said it here, right? I mean, seriously, they could have built 45 homes with the amount of doors they used. We got ourselves a little bit of fire here too, but most of all, these guys tore the house down and each other apart. I always say it, if you love deathmatch wrestling, if you love just independent wrestling, do everything you can to help the scene. Do your part. Don't be a dick. Don't be a pirate. Pay the ones to do what we all love, okay? This is what I do right here. This is everything I can do. I'm not going out there. I can't do all that crazy shit, okay? This is my help right here. Everything you just watched, this is my part. So go out there and do yours. If you can't afford merch or you can't afford tickets, just do what helps out me and everybody else. Just spread the word. Just share all the videos, share all of the links, all of the shows, all of the event flyers. Do everything you can. Just spread the word. That's free. That's helpful. Very, very helpful. But for now, that is all. Thank you guys so much. I hope to see you on the next video. Stick around for the little montage at the end that we got. We'll see you later. Have a great day, everybody.
What is on the mind of Casey and Brandon? Oh my